Comment please by Univest here at AM 1440 on this Tuesday afternoon. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, we are starting a series of interviews with the congressional candidates from the 15th, 13th, 6th, and 8th congressional districts. They represent portions of Montgomery and Bucks counties. And we're going to start off with an independent candidate, Jake Towne, who is running in the 15th congressional district, which is what I always consider to be the Lehigh Valley district, but it also comes down into Montgomery County and represents a section of central Montgomery County and western Montgomery County. And Jake, thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Jake, I can tell you because I happened to move a couple of months ago into the 15th congressional district, so I'll be casting a ballot for the first time in the 15th district. I live in Upper Saucon Township, so...
Absolutely, yes, and maybe for your listeners as well, the area in Montgomery County is like around Pottstown, East Greenville, then extends down like Upper Pottsgrove, and then there's another little pizza cutter strand that goes into like Souderton in that area. Exactly,
Souderton, Franconia Township is included, the Upper Perkiomen Valley, which is where I grew up, and then the kind of a swath through the western part of the county, which includes places like Douglasville and that sort of thing over toward Pottstown. So it is not an insignificant portion of Montgomery County that is represented in the 15th Congressional District. Tell me a little bit about where you're coming from as an independent candidate. I have over the years interviewed libertarians and Constitutional Party candidates, Natural Law Party candidates, and a variety of independent candidates, and the one thing they have in common is they haven't won. What makes Jake Towne different?
Well, I used to be registered with one of the two major parties, and I kind of got pretty frustrated. My life, I've spent the past 8 years working as a chemical engineer. In the last 4 years, I was working abroad in Shanghai, China.
Mm-hmm.
And before I moved over there, I really wasn't too attuned to what was going on in politics. But after I moved over there and I saw how the people over there live, I just had a different approach to how we have our liberties and really our way of life here in the U.S. And I started looking back at all these things that were happening with the bailouts, which, if you recall, both the Republicans and the Democrats were very much for, and foreign policy. Like we have these wars abroad, these endless wars, like there's no end in sight really on them.
Mm-hmm.
And both these parties, support them. And when you get down to monetary policy, yeah, they might disagree a little bit about how much they're going to spend, but the fiscally conservative party, the Republicans, they increased the size of the government by 70% when they were in power, and Democrats have just kind of done the exact same. So I got to be very frustrated. What I call the whole system is a two-headed one-party system, and we really need to move away towards taking a look at solutions instead of perpetuating these endless debt and endless wars abroad.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you sound like you could be a libertarian.
Well, I've never been registered with the Libertarian Party, and what I do tell people is that, simply put, I'm for liberty, both personal and economic liberty. But on a lot of things, I think that the federal government is doing just quite a bit too much that is best left to state and local government.
Mm-hmm.
So, I obviously am very much for the rule of law. One of the things I always carry around me with is a pocket constitution, and I think that is very important. And the whole reason that we need to have a rule of law, it's not to run your life or anything like that. It's to tell you what you can and cannot do. It's to tell the government what it can and cannot do, and it's also there to protect your individual liberties from the government in the first place.
Why not get on with one of these? I mean, whether it's the Libertarians, Constitution Party, obviously, there are a lot of these elements within the current Tea Party movement. What is your relationship with the Tea Party movement locally?
Sure. Well, just a quick note on the other parties. And locally in the area, there's not too much activity. But in terms of the local Tea Parties, there's a few in the district. There was one that's quite large with over 1,000 members, and there's a few smaller gatherings. And it depends kind of which group you talk about, because, obviously what I have in common with these groups is against big government government spending and, to follow the Constitution. And some of the groups are a little bit more about, stopping the bailouts and the corporatism that's kind of going on in our government. And others, as you may be aware, have a little bit more of a Republican-type flavor to their agenda.
Yeah.
So that's, what I do have is I have supporters in them, and my Tea Party candidate, no, absolutely not.
Again, you've got to go to the voters in the 15th Congressional District and convince them not only that what you say makes sense, but that you can actually win the election, because people are going to, they want to identify with a winner, even in the polling place. Given the fact that independents generally don't run very well, given the fact that third-party candidates don't have a great record of success, what is different about this year's environment, or specifically the 15th Congressional District, that gives somebody who's going to vote for Jake Towne some hope of you actually winning?
That's a great question, and I think that there's a lot of anti-incumbency out there just for the reason that I mentioned. I like to classify both parties as Republicrats, and one of the things about my race is there's really it's not as if it's voting by elimination, but both Mr. Dent, who's the incumbent, has been in there. He's been in there for 6 years under the Republican Party banner. Hasn't done a single thing. When he went into office, local unemployment was 5%. It's now double. It's over 10%. The national debt was $7.5 trillion when he went into office, and now it's roughly double. And in terms of the banker bailout, he voted for the banker bailout. The Democrat that's running against him, Mr. Callahan and myself, he is, he's actually stated he would have voted for the banker bailout, and a lot of the solutions that he have, that's the problem. They aren't really the solutions. It's just the rehashed ideas of this failed two-party system over the last few years. So, the biggest challenge, quite honestly, Daryl, is to reach out to enough people, and that's where, obviously, having money and that sort of thing does help out quite a bit, and they've got millions in the bank from their special interest groups and PACs. But my campaign has been able to raise over $50,000, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but 100% comes from private individuals. I do not accept money from corporate PACs or lobbyists, and it's number one in the nation for United States House in terms of fundraising. So we've been able to do enough, and I've been pretty active. The campaign started back in July of 2009. So, like I said, just getting out there and meeting people. I've done quite a bit and plan to do a lot more.
You talked about, deficit. You talked about the bailout and health care. Is there a defining issue? Is it the concern over the soaring deficits that the country is engaged in right now? What do you think is the real crux of this upcoming election?
Well, I mean, it's obviously the economy and the jobs that we have out there, or lack thereof, and who has the solutions to address them. And what I have listed on my website, which is towneforcongress.com, TOWNE for Congress.com, the first plank that I have under issues is my jobs plank. And all I do there is I just list the ways, and it's a very novel, look at things. The Republican and the Democrats aren't looking at the problem at this, and Democratic parties even aren't even looking at this in the right way. But, governments do not create sustainable jobs, only people do. And what we need to realize is that it's the government's harmful interventions in the labor laws, and the regulatory laws, and the tax laws that are really, creating all this unemployment. And all you have to do, and I'm not saying remove every single regulation, but you go through the list of regulations that you have out there and you ask yourself a question. Does this encourage or discourage employment? And if it discourages employment, then you better, consider changing it or getting rid of it. And there's so many laws out there that are affecting that pretty much in a malevolent manner that they need to be changed.
What about the health care issue? Obviously, I'm guessing that you would not have voted for Obamacare. You sound like you would have been in opposition to it. What do we have to do? Have fewer regulations on insurance companies, that sort of thing?
Well, the number one thing that I tell people that, and what the bill doesn't address, what the Republicans don't address, and what the Democrats certainly didn't address in the current bill, is you have to destroy the health care cartel. What this cartel does, and the insurance cartel, is basically it's a price fixing scheme where you go to any state in the union and you have a choice between 5 or 6 companies. You can't buy over state lines. Tort reform is a mess, and all those things need to be addressed. But to address them, you have to remove the cartels. And the HMO Act of 1973 put in place a lot of these things. Like, for instance, everybody has to register every year. And all I'm saying is, if you get rid of that and allow people to trade and allow a lot more competition, what you'll get is, for instance, instead of registering in open enrollment every year, you have a 5-year contract or a 2-year contract or whatever. And what you'll get is cheaper costs with better quality. And I believe that's the crux of the matter is destroying the cartels, which is really just another way of addressing the ridiculous costs that are in the whole situation. Because, for instance, if you have to pay like $200 for an MRI or $500 to spend a night to go overnight in the ER, we wouldn't be having this conversation because it would be more or less affordable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like $3,000 for an MRI, $20,000 for a night in the ER. It's just insane.
You're having worked abroad and worked in communist China. How does that frame your view of the world, of the issues that are pertinent in the 15th Congressional District, and what do you try and impart to the people that you talk to during the course of your campaign? In essence, what lessons have you learned from having lived over there?
Well, first of all, what I kind of came in face and contact with was how our country is exporting our jobs abroad. And a lot of these deals that we've signed, whether it's NAFTA or whether it's with the WTO and granting most favored nation status to China, whether it's all these things, what you need to realize is that they are not really free trade agreements. What they are is privileged trade agreements for corporations that have spent the money to buy the politicians. And it may seem a little bit weird because one of the things that these agreements do is they, instead of being like 2 sentences, like that's what I tell people, if free trade be 2 sentences long, I'll trade these goods for that, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like 10,000 pages long, and the reason they're 10,000 pages long is they put in place all these regulations. And it sounds kind of, why would these corporations put in place all these regulations?
That's where all the loopholes are.
Well, yeah, there's loopholes. You're correct. But what it also does is they're able to cope with it because their company is large enough that they can afford a regulations department or what have you to
mm-hmm.
Step through all the loops. What it does is it creates a barrier to new entry. It's against small businesses, and it results, especially with all these taxes that we have here and abroad, and more favorable tax situations abroad. What you have is the exportation of a lot of America's capital, whether it's factories moving abroad or a lot of our well-paying jobs going over. So that needs to be addressed. And the other thing that I kind of learned from living abroad is it kind of widens up your perspective. And I never realized just how much our country spends on our foreign policy, whether it's the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq or whether it's the 55,000 troops in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
You have over 760 military bases in 150 countries, and there's less than 200 countries on the planet. No other country does this type of thing, and we spend more on our military than the rest of the world combined, yet we don't even defend our own borders. And what we need to do is defend our own borders, which is the constitutional mandate of Congress and what a responsibility that they've slacked off on, and take a very sharp look at spending well over $1 trillion on this foreign policy and all this foreign aid to all these countries abroad. It's pretty insane.